"She's dead to Dad," my sister said at the will reading. "Even her kid knows she's garbage." Then my son said, "Grandpa gave me a video. Having you here listening to me means a lot. Watch until the end and let me know in the comments which city you're watching from. I'm really curious to see how far my story is reaching." The lawyer's office felt too small, too suffocating. I sat in the corner chair, separate from the rest of my family who clustered together on the leather sofa across the room. My father's death 3 days ago still didn't feel real. Now, gathered for the reading of his will, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was an outsider at my own father's memorial. "Let's begin," Mr. Patterson said, adjusting his glasses as he opened the thick folder on his desk. I stared at the dark wood paneling behind him, trying to prepare myself for what was coming. Dad and I hadn't spoken in almost 2 years. The last time was at my mother's funeral, where he barely acknowledged me before returning to Victoria's side. My sister had always been his favorite, the perfect daughter who followed in his business footsteps while I chose a different path. My son Nathan fidgeted beside me, his small hand in mine. At 8 years old, he was too young to fully understand what was happening, but I brought him because he was my only family now. The only one I could trust. To my daughter Victoria, I leave my controlling shares in Harrington Enterprises, the family home, and all associated properties, Mr. Patterson read monotonously. Victoria's face remained impassive, as if she'd known all along. My stomach tightened. To my grandson Nathan, I leave a trust fund of $50,000 to be accessed when he turns 21. I squeezed Nathan's hand. At least Dad had remembered him. Mr. Patterson cleared his throat awkwardly before continuing. To my daughter Samantha. There was a pause. I leave my personal library collection. Books. I got my father's books. The collection was beautiful, certainly, but the message was clear. Victoria got the empire, I got the decorations. Mr. Patterson continued reading more minor bequests to cousins and old friends, but I was no longer listening. The blood rushed to my ears, and I felt lightheaded with humiliation. I knew Dad and I had grown apart, but I never imagined he would cut me out so completely. When the reading finished, Victoria stood up, smoothing her expensive black dress. Her husband Marcus placed his hand on her lower back, the picture of a supportive spouse. "Well, that's settled then," Victoria said, her voice dripping with satisfaction. She looked directly at me for the first time since I'd arrived. "I'll need the keys to Dad's house by the end of the week. You can arrange to pick up your books whenever it's convenient." I stood up, legs shaky but refusing to show weakness. "Victoria, can we talk privately for a moment?" "There's nothing to discuss, Samantha. The will is clear. It's about Dad's last few months. I want to understand." Victoria cut me off with a cold laugh that echoed in the quiet office. "Understand what? That you abandoned him when he needed family the most? That you were too busy with your artistic pursuits to care for your dying father? That's not fair. You know I tried to visit. You were the one who—" "She's dead to Dad," Victoria announced loudly, turning to address everyone in the room. "Has been for years. Even told me so himself." She looked down at Nathan with false sympathy. "Even the child knows she's worthless." The words hit me like physical blows. I felt the room spin slightly. Nathan's grip on my hand tightened. "Victoria, that's quite enough," Mr. Patterson said sharply, but the damage was done. I looked down at Nathan, expecting to see confusion or fear on his face. Instead, his expression was unexpectedly determined. He stepped forward, his small shoulders squared. "The Vovo gave me a video," he said, his voice clear and surprisingly steady. The room went completely silent. "What are you talking about, sweetie?" Victoria's saccharine voice couldn't hide her sudden tension. Nathan reached into his little suit jacket pocket and pulled out a small USB drive. "Grandpa gave me this when I visited him. He said only Mom should see it." Victoria's face drained of color. "When did you visit him?" "That's impossible." Marcus stepped forward, reaching for the drive. "Let me see that, buddy." Nathan stepped back, clutching the USB tightly. No. It's for my mom. Victoria's composure cracked. Give me that right now. She lunged forward, trying to snatch it from his hand. I stepped between them, shielding Nathan. Don't you dare touch my son. Victoria's eyes were wild, almost panicked. Whatever's on that, it's not legitimate. Dad was heavily medicated at the end. He wasn't himself. Funny, I said, finding my voice at last. You seemed perfectly confident about his mental state regarding the will just moments ago. For once, Victoria had no ready response. She stared at the little USB drive in Nathan's hand as if it might explode. What could be on that video that terrified my sister so much? What had my father told my son in secret that he couldn't, or wouldn't, tell me while he was alive? I took Nathan's hand, the USB drive now safely in my pocket. We're leaving now, I said, heading for the door. I'll be in touch about the library collection. As we walked out, I heard Victoria hissing urgently at Marcus. The confidence that had radiated from her just minutes ago was gone, replaced by something I'd rarely seen in my sister, fear. The drive home from the lawyer's office was silent. Nathan sat in the back seat, unusually quiet, his eyes focused on the world outside the window. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, my mind racing with questions. How had Nathan been visiting my father without my knowledge? Who had taken him there? And what could possibly be on that video that made Victoria react with such panic? I pulled into our modest driveway, so different from the grand estate where I'd grown up. Our small 3-bedroom house was all I could afford after leaving the family business to pursue my career in educational psychology. It wasn't much, but it was ours, and it was free from my family's toxic influence. Nathan, I said gently as we entered the house. We need to talk about this video. How did you visit Grandpa? He placed his backpack carefully on the kitchen counter. Miss Elaine took me. Elaine? Dad's home nurse? I was stunned. How many times did you go? Every other Saturday for the last 3 months. Nathan's eyes met mine, a hint of guilt showing through. She said Grandpa wanted to see me, but it had to be secret. I'm sorry I didn't tell you, Mom. I knelt to his level. You're not in trouble, sweetheart. I just need to understand what happened. Grandpa was really sick. He stayed in bed most of the time. Nathan's voice quivered slightly. But he told me stories about when you were little. He showed me pictures of you. My throat tightened. Dad had kept photos of me? He said he made a mistake, Nathan continued. He said people lied to him about you, and he believed them. He cried once. I tried to process this information. My father, stern, unyielding Richard Harrington, crying and admitting mistakes. The last time, he gave me this. Nathan pulled out the USB drive. He made me promise to hide it from Aunt Victoria. He said it was really important that only you see it. I stared at the small device that had caused such chaos in the lawyer's office. Let's watch it together, I finally said. We moved to the living room, and I plugged the drive into the TV. After a moment of loading, my father's face appeared on screen. I gasped involuntarily. He looked so much worse than I'd imagined. His once robust frame was withered, his skin pale and papery against the dark pillows propping him up. But his eyes, those steely gray eyes that could command a room, were clear and focused. Samantha, he began, his voice raspy but determined. If you're watching this, then I'm gone, and Nathan has successfully delivered this message. I've asked a lot of this boy, your boy, these past months. He's extraordinary, Samantha. You've raised him well. Tears blurred my vision. I felt Nathan's small hand slip into mine. I've made terrible mistakes, Dad continued. The worst was believing the lies that were told about you. Victoria. He paused, a flash of pain crossing his features. Victoria has been manipulating me for years. I was too blind, too stubborn to see it until it was almost too late. I could hardly breathe. For years, I'd wondered why my father had suddenly turned against me after I discovered discrepancies in the company accounts. Victoria had convinced him I was trying to embezzle funds to start my own business, when in reality, I'd uncovered her husband Marcus's systematic theft from the company. Victoria and Marcus falsified documents, emails. They even hired someone to forge your signature on company withdrawals. I have proof now, but I'm too weak to act on it. He coughed painfully before continuing. There's a safe in my study, behind the painting of the lighthouse. The combination is your mother's birthday. Inside, you'll find everything you need, the real financial records, security footage, sworn statements from employees they tried to bribe. My mind reeled. Evidence. Actual evidence that could clear my name, evidence that proved I'd been telling the truth all along. I've made a new will, Dad continued, his breathing becoming more labored. Patterson doesn't know about it. I used my old college friend, Judge Hammond, to make it official. It's also in the safe. The will they'll read to you is the one Victoria forced me to sign when I was heavily medicated. I covered my mouth to stifle a sob. The betrayal ran so much deeper than I'd imagined. I'm so sorry, Samantha. Dad's eyes filled with tears. I should have believed you. I should have protected you. Instead, I let them drive you away. I've missed so much. He looked down, composing himself. But Nathan has been my salvation these past months. Through him, I got to know the daughter I pushed away. I hope. His voice broke. I hope you can forgive me someday. The screen went black for a moment, then returned to my father, seemingly filmed on a different day. He looked even weaker. One last thing, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Victoria doesn't know about the changes I've made to the company structure in the past month. On paper, she inherits my shares, but I've transferred true controlling interest to a holding company that you, Samantha, are the sole owner of. It's all legal, all binding. The paperwork is with Judge Hammond. He managed a small smile. You always had the best mind for business, even though you chose a different path. Now the company's future is in your hands. He paused, taking a labored breath. Choose wisely, daughter. And remember that I loved you, even when I failed to show it. The video ended. I sat frozen, tears streaming down my face. Nathan leaned against me. Grandpa said you'd need to be brave. He said Aunt Victoria would be really mad. I pulled him into a tight hug, my mind racing with the implications of what I'd just learned. Victoria had manipulated and deceived our father. She and Marcus had framed me, destroyed my reputation, and driven me from my family and my inheritance. And now, from beyond the grave, my father had given me the power to reclaim everything. But Victoria already knew something was wrong. The look on her face when Nathan revealed the existence of the video told me she'd fight with everything she had to keep what she believed was hers. Are we going to get Grandpa's things from the safe? Nathan asked, his innocent question cutting through my thoughts. I wiped my tears and straightened my shoulders. Yes, sweetheart. But we need to be very careful. Very smart. The game had changed completely. Victoria thought she'd won it all, but she had no idea what was coming. My father had given me one last gift, the truth. And with it, the power to reclaim my place and restore justice to our family. The following morning, I woke up with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. I called Nathan's school to let them know he'd be absent, then phoned my department head at the university where I worked as a child development researcher. Family emergency, I explained. Dr. Winters, who had been understanding about my father's passing, granted me 3 more days of leave. Are we going to Grandpa's house now? Nathan asked, already dressed and waiting by the door. Not yet, I replied, checking my phone. 3 missed calls from Victoria. We need to be smart about this. Victoria will be watching the house. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from her. We need to talk about that USB drive. Call me immediately. I ignored it and turned to Nathan. First, we're going to visit someone who can help us. 20 minutes later, we pulled up to a small law office downtown. Judge James Hammond had been my father's college roommate and lifelong friend. If what my father said in the video was true, he'd know what to do. The elderly man's eyes widened when his secretary announced us. "Samantha Harrington," he said, standing slowly from behind his desk. "I've been expecting you." After sending Nathan to the waiting room with a tablet, I closed the office door and told Judge Hammond everything: the will reading, Victoria's behavior, and the video from my father. "Richard contacted me about 3 months ago," Hammond confirmed, pulling out a thick folder from his desk drawer. "He was devastated when he realized how Victoria had manipulated him against you." "I still don't understand why he believed her in the first place," I said, the old pain surfacing. Hammond sighed. "You have to understand, Richard was not the same after your mother died. Victoria stepped in, became his right hand. She had access to everything, his emails, his phone, even screened his visitors. She controlled what information reached him." "And what about the financial discrepancies I found? The ones that showed Marcus was embezzling?" "She convinced Richard that you had fabricated those reports to damage Marcus because you were jealous of Victoria's success." Hammond shook his head. "By the time he began to have doubts, you had already left, and his pride kept him from reaching out." I swallowed hard. "What changed?" "Marcus got careless. A junior accountant brought some irregularities directly to Richard, bypassing Victoria. It was the exact same pattern you had identified 3 years earlier." Hammond's eyes softened. "That's when Richard started digging. When he found the truth, he was devastated." He handed me the folder. Inside were bank statements, falsified company documents with my forged signature, and security camera footage of Marcus accessing files he shouldn't have had permission to view. "Why didn't he go to the police?" I asked. "He was dying, Samantha. He didn't want his last months alive spent in courtrooms. And..." Hammond hesitated. "He wanted to protect you." "Protect me? From what?" "From the scandal. From what it would do to the company, your inheritance." He pulled out another document. "This is the real will. It leaves the company equally to both you and Victoria, with you as the controlling partner." My hands trembled as I looked at the document. "She'll fight this." "She will," Hammond agreed. "But there's something else you should know. Something your father sacrificed to protect both you and the company's reputation." He explained that when my father confronted Victoria with what he discovered, she threatened to release doctored evidence suggesting I had been involved in corporate espionage, selling company secrets to competitors. That evidence was all fabricated, but it would have triggered investigations, ruined my professional reputation, and potentially resulted in criminal charges. "Your father made a deal with her," Hammond said quietly. "He would maintain the public illusion that she was his successor and keep silent about Marcus's embezzlement, if she would destroy all the false evidence against you." I sat in stunned silence, tears streaming down my face. My father had sacrificed his final chance to reconcile with me to protect me from Victoria's vindictiveness. "That's why he reached out to Nathan instead," I whispered, the pieces falling into place. "He couldn't contact me directly without Victoria knowing, but she wouldn't pay attention to an 8-year-old visiting his grandfather." Hammond nodded. "Richard hoped that after his death, once you had the evidence and the real will, you could reclaim your place without the risk of those false charges hanging over you." My phone buzzed again. Another message from Victoria: "If you don't call me back by noon, I'm sending someone to your house to get that drive." "This isn't a game, Samantha." I showed Hammond the message. "She's panicking," he observed. "But we still need the contents of that safe. The evidence in this folder is strong, but what Richard hid in his study will make the case airtight." "How do we get to it?" "Victoria's probably changed the locks already." Hammond smiled slightly. "Richard thought of that too." He reached into his desk and handed me a key to the service entrance. "The household staff used it to come and go without disturbing him. Victoria may not even know it exists." I pocketed the key and stood up. "What about the will? When can we file it?" "I've already begun the process," but it will take time. Victoria will challenge it, claim Richard was not of sound mind. Hammond's expression was grave. Be careful, Samantha. Victoria has spent years building her position. She won't give up everything without a fight. I thought about my sister, always the favorite, always scheming, always getting her way, and felt a resolve harden within me. Neither will I. When I emerged from Hammond's office, Nathan looked up from his tablet. Are we going to Grandpa's house now? I knelt before him, struck by how much had been placed on his small shoulders. Yes, but it might be dangerous. Victoria will be very angry if she catches us. Nathan's eyes, so like my father's, met mine steadily. Grandpa said we had to be brave. He said you were always the brave one, even when you were little. My throat tightened. What else had my father told this child during those secret visits? How much of the real Richard Harrington had Nathan gotten to know, when I had been denied that chance? Let's go get what belongs to us, I said, taking his hand. As we drove toward the estate where I'd grown up, I couldn't help wondering, what would Victoria do when she realized that her carefully constructed world was about to come crashing down? The Harrington estate looked exactly as I remembered it, imposing stone facade, manicured gardens, and the long, winding driveway that had once seemed magical to me as a child. Now it felt like approaching an enemy fortress. I parked a block away on a side street, out of view from the house. Remember what we talked about, I told Nathan as we walked toward the service entrance at the rear of the property. If I say run, you run. No questions. Nathan nodded solemnly. I hated involving him in this, but I couldn't leave him behind, and there was no one I trusted to watch him while Victoria was on the warpath. The key Judge Hammond had given me still worked. We slipped through the small wooden door half hidden behind a row of hedges and found ourselves in the narrow service corridor that led to the kitchen. Mrs. Chen might be working, I whispered, referring to the housekeeper who had been with our family for decades. She always liked me, but we can't risk her telling Victoria we were here. We paused, listening. The house was eerily quiet. Cautiously, we made our way through the kitchen and into the main hall. Everything looked the same, yet somehow different, like revisiting a place you'd only seen in dreams. This way, I whispered, leading Nathan toward my father's study. We were halfway up the grand staircase when a voice froze me in place. What exactly do you think you're doing? My mother stood at the top of the stairs, arms crossed, her face a mask of disapproval. Not my birth mother, who had died years ago, but Catherine, the woman my father had married when I was 16. Victoria's mother. Catherine, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I didn't expect you to be here. Clearly, she replied coldly. Her gaze shifted to Nathan. Is this him? Richard's grandson? Nathan pressed closer to my side. We're just here to collect some personal items, I said, climbing the remaining stairs to face her directly. Dad left me his library collection. Catherine's lips thinned. The library is downstairs. You're heading to Richard's study. There are some books there too, I countered, my heart racing. First editions he promised me years ago. She studied me for a long moment. Victoria said you might try something like this. She's on her way back now. My stomach dropped. From where? Your house, of course. She wanted to speak with you directly. Catherine's smile was razor thin. She should be realizing you're not home right about now. I checked my phone. 5 missed calls in the last 10 minutes. Why are you doing this, Catherine? I asked, genuine confusion in my voice. You're not even blood family. What do you get out of helping Victoria destroy me? Something flickered in her eyes, doubt, perhaps, or guilt. Victoria has always been loyal to this family. You abandoned your father when he needed you most. Is that what she told you? I took a step closer. Did she also tell you that her husband has been embezzling from the company for years? That she helped frame me when I discovered it? Catherine faltered, clearly caught off guard. What are you talking about? Ask her about the Carson Industries acquisition, I said, naming the deal where I'd first spotted the irregularities. Ask her why $3 million disappeared from the transaction records only to reappear in offshore accounts linked to Marcus. I could see her processing this, uncertainty creeping into her expression. That's absurd. Victoria would never. Mom, Nathan tugged at my hand. Someone's coming. Through the tall windows, I could see a black SUV speeding up the driveway, Victoria's car. Catherine, I said urgently, I just need 5 minutes in Dad's study. Please. If what I'm saying isn't true, you'll never see me again. She hesitated, and in that moment, I saw that despite everything, Catherine had never fully trusted Victoria either. 5 minutes, she said finally. I'll stall her downstairs. Relief flooded through me. Thank you. Catherine nodded once, then descended the staircase just as the front door burst open. Catherine. Victoria's voice echoed through the foyer. Is she here? Her car wasn't at her house. I didn't wait to hear more. Gripping Nathan's hand, I hurried down the hallway to my father's study. The heavy oak door was locked. Now what? Nathan whispered. I ran my fingers along the top of the doorframe, finding the spare key exactly where Dad had always kept it. Some habits never changed. Inside, the study was a time capsule, the same leather chairs, the same massive desk, and the same painting of a lighthouse that had hung there since I was a child. I quickly moved to it, lifting it carefully from the wall to reveal a small wall safe. My mother's birthday, March 17, 1962. I entered the numbers with trembling fingers, holding my breath until I heard the satisfying click of the lock disengaging. Inside were several file folders, a USB drive similar to the one Nathan had given me, and a small wooden box I'd never seen before. I grabbed everything, stuffing it into my bag. Mom, Nathan whispered urgently. I hear someone coming. Footsteps were approaching rapidly down the hallway. I quickly replaced the painting and guided Nathan toward the study's connecting door that led to the adjacent guest room. We slipped through just as the main door to the study flew open. I know you're in here, Samantha. Victoria's voice was shrill with anger. Security systems showed the study door opening. We froze, barely breathing, as we heard her moving around the room. The safe, she hissed suddenly. Check the safe. Marcus's voice now, it's open. Empty. Victoria let out a string of curses that made me cover Nathan's ears. Find her. She has to be somewhere in the house. We needed an escape route. The guest room had a balcony that overlooked the east garden. It wasn't a long drop, but too far for Nathan. Can you climb on my back? I whispered. He nodded bravely. With Nathan clinging to me like a koala, I carefully opened the balcony doors and climbed over the railing. There was a sturdy trellis covered in ivy that I'd used as a teenager to sneak out. I prayed it would still hold our weight. Hold tight, I whispered to Nathan, and began our descent. We were halfway down when the balcony doors flew open above us. Victoria leaned out, her face contorted with rage when she spotted us. Stop right there, she screamed, reaching for her phone. Marcus. They're outside. I quickened our pace, ignoring the thorns that tore at my hands. When we reached the ground, I set Nathan down and we ran for the service entrance, staying low among the hedges. As we reached the small door, Catherine appeared from within. For a horrifying moment, I thought she had betrayed us. Instead, she pressed a set of keys into my hand. Take the gardener's cart, she said urgently. It's by the shed. They won't think to look for it right away. Why are you helping us? I asked, bewildered. Catherine's eyes were sad. I found one of Richard's journals last week. He wrote about his regrets, about you. I think he was telling the truth. Catherine. Victoria's voice called from inside. Where are you? Go, Catherine urged, pushing us toward the shed. I never saw you. We found the small electric cart and were through the service gate within minutes. Only when we were safely back in our car did I allow myself to breathe normally again. Did we get what we needed? Nathan asked as we drove away. I glanced at my bag, bulging with the evidence that would restore my reputation and secure our future. We did, I assured him. But Victoria won't give up easily. My phone rang, an unknown number. Cautiously, I answered on speaker. Samantha, it's Marcus. His voice was low, urgent. We need to talk. I have nothing to say to you, I replied coldly. Victoria's lost it, he continued, ignoring my rejection. She's talking about having you arrested for breaking and entering. She's already called her friend at the police department. A chill ran through me. Why are you telling me this? There was a pause. Because I want to make a deal. I know what you found in that safe. I want immunity. So the rats were already abandoning the sinking ship. Meet me at Hammond's office in an hour, I said. And Marcus? Come alone, or there's no deal. As we drove away from the neighborhood where I'd grown up, I glanced at Nathan in the rearview mirror. He was looking through one of the folders I'd taken, his small face serious as he studied documents he couldn't possibly understand. Is Aunt Victoria going to jail? He asked suddenly. The question caught me off guard. Despite everything, Victoria was still his aunt, still my sister. I don't know, sweetheart, I answered honestly. But I do know that she can't hurt us anymore. For the first time since this all began, I allowed myself to believe it might be true. Judge Hammond's office was quiet when we arrived, save for the ticking of an antique clock on the wall. Nathan had fallen asleep in the car, exhausted from our adventure, and I'd carried him in. He now dozed on the leather couch in the corner while Hammond and I spoke in hushed tones. You actually got into the safe, Hammond said, examining the documents I'd retrieved. Richard would be proud. What about Marcus? I asked, glancing at my watch. He should be here soon. Hammond frowned. Are you sure meeting him is wise? Victoria could have put him up to this. Before I could respond, Hammond's secretary buzzed to announce Marcus's arrival. My brother-in-law entered, looking significantly less polished than usual. His designer suit was rumpled, his face haggard. Samantha, he nodded, then noticed Hammond. I thought we'd be speaking privately. Judge Hammond is my legal counsel, I replied coolly. Anything you say to me, you can say to him. Marcus's eyes darted to Nathan sleeping on the couch, then back to me. Fine. Here's the situation, Victoria has lost it. She's threatening everyone, me, Catherine, even the household staff. She's desperate to get those documents back. Why would you turn against her now? I asked, skeptical. You've been partners in this scheme from the beginning. A flash of irritation crossed his face. Because she's throwing me under the bus. Telling people I acted alone, that she knew nothing about the financial irregularities. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a thumb drive. This contains recordings of conversations between Victoria and me, discussing how to frame you 3 years ago. It proves she was the mastermind. I stared at the thumb drive, hardly believing what I was hearing. Why would you record those conversations? Insurance, he said simply. Victoria has always been ruthless. I needed protection in case she ever turned on me. He placed the drive on Hammond's desk. This is my offer, full testimony against Victoria in exchange for immunity. I'll return the money I took, resign from the company, sign whatever you want. I exchanged glances with Hammond. This was unexpected, a complete capitulation from Marcus, and damning evidence against Victoria. I'll need to verify the contents first, Hammond said, picking up the drive cautiously. Of course, Marcus nodded. But don't take too long. Victoria's filing charges against Samantha for breaking into the house. She's claiming you stole valuable items beyond what was in the safe. My stomach dropped. She can't be serious. She is. And she has the security footage of you and the boy entering through the service door. She's spinning it as a calculated burglary. Marcus looked genuinely concerned. You need to act fast. Hammond connected the drive to his computer while I digested this new threat. The old Victoria I knew was calculating and manipulative, but this level of desperation seemed extreme even for her. Judge, would the new will hold up in court with these kinds of accusations hanging over me? I asked. Hammond looked troubled. It complicates things. If Victoria can get charges filed before we file the new will, it could cast doubt on your character, give her grounds to challenge. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. There's something else you should know. Victoria found an old letter from your father to you in his desk. She's destroyed it. A sharp pain shot through my chest. What did it say? I don't know exactly. But I overheard her on the phone saying it would have changed everything if you had seen it. Marcus looked almost apologetic. She burned it this morning. Another piece of my father, gone forever. I swallowed hard, pushing down the grief. Hammond's computer chimed. He'd opened one of the files from Marcus's drive, a video recording. Victoria's voice filled the room, clear and calculating. Need to isolate her completely. Once Dad believes she betrayed him, he'll cut her out for good. Trust me, I know how he thinks. Marcus's voice replied, and the money? Nearly $4 million is missing now. It's handled, Victoria snapped. The offshore accounts are untraceable. Besides, once Samantha's gone, no one will look too closely. Dad sees what he wants to see. Hammond stopped the playback, his expression grim. It seems authentic. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Catherine. Victoria just left with 2 police officers. I think they're coming for you. I showed the message to Hammond, who immediately stood. We need to get these documents to the courthouse now, file everything before she can act. I can stall them, Marcus offered. Tell Victoria you've gone somewhere else. Why would she believe you? Because I'm supposed to be following you. At least he had the decency to look embarrassed. I'll tell her I tracked you to the university. I considered his offer. Could I trust him? The evidence on the drive seemed legitimate, and he had every reason to save himself now that Victoria was scapegoating him. Fine, I agreed. But if you're playing both sides. I'm not, he interrupted. Victoria's scorched earth approach will destroy us all. I'm just trying to survive. After Marcus left, Hammond gathered the documents into his briefcase. I'll take these directly to Judge Winters. She's an old friend, she'll expedite the filing. He paused, glancing at Nathan. But you need to go somewhere safe until this is resolved. I nodded, my mind racing. Where could we go that Victoria wouldn't think to look? As I gently woke Nathan, my phone buzzed again. A text from my department chair at the university. Just had a strange call asking if you were here. Said no. Everything okay? At least Marcus was keeping his word. Then I noticed something odd on my phone's screen. A notification I hadn't seen before, one new voicemail from Dad. My hands trembled as I opened it. The timestamp showed it was from 3 months ago, but I had never received a call from my father's number during that time. I pressed play and held the phone to my ear. Samantha, my father's frail voice came through. I don't know if you'll get this. Victoria monitors my calls, but the nurse has given me her phone while Victoria's out. A pause, a labored breath. I've found out the truth. Everything. I know what they did to you, and I'm so sorry I didn't believe you. I've made arrangements with Hammond. Please forgive me, and please look after Nathan. He's so much like you, bright, honest. I see so much of you in him. My vision blurred with tears. There's a change I've made that no one knows about, not even Hammond, he continued, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. The company's intellectual property, all the patents, research, everything developed in the last 5 years, I've transferred to a new holding company. Firefly Innovations. You'll find the paperwork in the wooden box from the safe. I froze, suddenly remembering the small wooden box I'd taken from the safe and hadn't yet opened. It's yours, Samantha. All of it. Victoria gets the buildings, the name, but you get the real value, the future. It's my gift to you, and my apology." The message ended. My hands shaking, I dug through my bag until I found the small wooden box. Inside was a single document, transfer of ownership for Firefly Innovations, with my name as the sole proprietor, and a list of patents that represented the most valuable assets of Harrington Enterprises. My father had outsmarted Victoria after all. While she fought for the shell of the company, I now held its beating heart. "Mom?" Nathan was awake, rubbing his eyes. "Are you crying?" I wiped my cheeks, a strange mix of grief and triumph washing over me. "Happy tears, sweetheart. Grandpa left us one more surprise." 3 weeks after our escape from the Harrington estate, Nathan and I returned to our small house for the first time. We'd been staying with my old college roommate in a neighboring state while Hammond fought the legal battle on our behalf. I unlocked the door, feeling a strange mix of familiarity and distance. So much had changed since we'd last been here. "Can I set up my dinosaurs again?" Nathan asked, heading straight for his room. "Of course, sweetheart," I smiled, grateful for his resilience. Children adapt so much more easily than adults. I set down our bags and went to the kitchen to check the mail that had accumulated. Among the bills and flyers was a thick envelope bearing the Harrington Enterprises logo. Inside was a settlement offer from Victoria's attorneys. She would drop all charges against me and acknowledge the new will if I would sign over Firefly Innovations to her. I laughed softly. She still didn't understand. This had never been about money or power for me. It was about truth, about clearing my name, about honoring my father's final wishes. My phone rang. "Judge Hammond." "The police have dropped all charges," he said without preamble. "Catherine gave a statement confirming you had permission to be in the house. And Marcus has provided extensive evidence of Victoria's schemes." "What about the will?" I asked. "Judge Winters has officially recognized Richard's final testament as valid. You and Victoria are now equal shareholders in Harrington Enterprises, with you holding controlling interest." I could hear the smile in his voice. "You've won, Samantha." Had I? It didn't feel like victory. My father was still gone. My relationship with my sister was destroyed beyond repair. And for what? A company I had left years ago to pursue my own path? "There's a board meeting tomorrow," Hammond continued. "Your presence is required as the new controlling shareholder. Victoria will be there." "I'll be there," I promised, my mind already turning over what needed to be said. The next morning, I dressed carefully in a simple blue suit, professional but not ostentatious. I wanted the board to see me as capable and confident, not trying to imitate Victoria's intimidating style. Nathan was spending the day with a friend from school, safely away from the corporate drama. As I drove to the Harrington Enterprises headquarters, a building I had once thought I would someday lead, I reflected on everything that had brought me to this moment. The boardroom fell silent when I entered. 8 pairs of eyes turned to me, 7 board members and Victoria, sitting at the far end of the table. She looked immaculate as always, but there was a tightness around her eyes that betrayed her stress. Ms. Harrington, Walter Chen, the board chairman, greeted me formally. "Please take your seat." I nodded and sat in the empty chair at the head of the table, my father's old seat. For a moment, no one spoke. The tension was palpable. "I believe introductions are in order," Chen continued awkwardly. "Many of us haven't had the pleasure of working with you since you left the company." "That won't be necessary," I said calmly. "I remember everyone here." "Then perhaps we should address the elephant in the room," Victoria spoke up, her voice controlled but brittle. "The circumstances that have brought us to this unusual situation." I met her gaze steadily. "You mean your systematic effort to frame me for embezzlement, turn our father against me, and steal my rightful place in both the company and the family?" Several board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "Those are serious allegations," Victoria replied, a warning in her tone. "They're not allegations. They're facts, supported by extensive evidence that's now in the hands of the authorities." I opened my portfolio and placed copies of key documents on the table. Marcus has been very cooperative. Victoria's composure cracked slightly at the mention of her husband. Marcus is a liar trying to save himself. Perhaps, I conceded. But security camera footage doesn't lie. Bank records don't lie. And Dad's own recorded testimony doesn't lie. I looked around the table at the board members, many of whom had known me since childhood. I want to be clear about something. I didn't come back for revenge or to destroy what Dad built. I came back because it was his dying wish that the truth be known. I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city skyline. Harrington Enterprises has always stood for integrity. That's what Dad taught me from the beginning. It's what Victoria forgot somewhere along the way. When I turned back, I noticed something unexpected in several board members' eyes: respect. So what happens now? Chin asked, voicing what everyone was thinking. I returned to my seat and placed a folder on the table. This is my proposal for the company's future. I'd like everyone to review it before we make any decisions. As the folder was passed around, I kept my eyes on Victoria. She looked defeated but still defiant. When the folder reached her, she barely glanced at it before sliding it away. You want to dismantle Dad's company, she accused. Break it into pieces. No, I corrected her. I want to evolve it into what Dad envisioned before he became too ill to lead. I addressed the entire board. Harrington Enterprises has always been about innovation. The proposal outlines a restructuring that emphasizes our research and development division, now under Firefly Innovations, while streamlining our manufacturing operations. Victoria's eyes widened at the mention of Firefly. That's what was in the wooden box, she whispered, almost to herself. For the next hour, we discussed the details of my proposal. The board asked thoughtful questions, and gradually the initial tension gave way to productive conversation. Victoria remained silent, watching with a mixture of anger and grudging admiration. When the formal meeting concluded, the board voted unanimously to adopt my restructuring plan, with full implementation to begin immediately. As people gathered their materials to leave, Victoria approached me. You planned this perfectly, she said quietly. Dad would be impressed. I studied her face, searching for the sister I had once admired and loved. This was never a game to me, Victoria. It was always a game, she replied. You just didn't know you were playing. She glanced at the boardroom, now empty except for us. What happens to me now? To Marcus? Marcus has made his deal with the authorities. As for you, I sighed. The board has agreed to let you keep your position as head of public relations, under supervision. Dad wouldn't have wanted to see his daughter publicly disgraced, and neither do I. Victoria's eyes narrowed suspiciously. Why would you show me mercy after everything I did? I thought of Nathan, of how he'd innocently become the bridge between generations, carrying my father's final message of reconciliation. Because holding on to anger and resentment would make me no better than you were, I said honestly. I don't want that for myself. I don't want that for Nathan. For a moment, something like regret flickered across Victoria's face. Nathan is a good kid, she admitted. He deserves better than the family we've been. Maybe we can change that, I suggested, not quite ready to offer forgiveness, but opening a door to possibility. Not for our sake, but for his. Victoria looked down at her hands, then back at me with a vulnerability I hadn't seen since we were children. I don't know how to start. You already have, I replied, gathering my things to leave. You acknowledged the truth. That's more than you've done in years. As I walked out of the building that housed my family's legacy, I felt a weight lifting. The silence that had shrouded our family's secrets for so long had finally been broken. The truth had emerged, not in a blaze of public scandal, but in the quiet restoration of justice and the tentative hope of healing. That evening, as Nathan showed me his homework at our kitchen table, our normal, ordinary life resuming, my phone pinged with a text from Victoria. Dad kept your graduation photo on his bedside table. He never stopped looking at it, even at the end. I stared at the message, tears filling my eyes. Another piece of my father returned to me, another silence broken. "Mom, are you okay?" Nathan asked, noticing my emotion. I showed him the text. "Aunt Victoria is telling me something important about Grandpa." Nathan considered this solemnly. "Grandpa told me he kept your picture by his bed. He said it helped him remember what was important." I pulled Nathan into a hug, overcome with gratitude for this child who had become the unlikely keeper of my father's true heart. "You know what was in that wooden box from Grandpa's safe?" I asked him. He shook his head. "The future," I said simply. "And we're going to build it together, the way Grandpa wanted, with truth and with love." Nathan nodded as if this made perfect sense to his 8-year-old mind. And perhaps it did. Children understand the essential truths that adults often complicate, that family should mean protection, not betrayal, that love should be given freely, not used as currency, and that sometimes the most powerful legacy is not what we leave behind, but the broken silences that finally allow the truth to be heard.